The Columbus Dispatch presents the BuckeyeXtra Football Podcast, your source for all things Ohio State football, with journalists Joey Kaufman, Brianna McKay, and columnist Rob Oller. And now, the BuckeyeXtra Football Podcast.
Welcome back, Buckeye fans, to another edition of the BuckeyeXtra Football Podcast. We are inching closer to the college football season. It's Friday, August 28th. Ohio State's had a few weeks of preseason practices. They broke camp last week. They are in the penultimate week of preseason practices. Next week, they open against Ball State. So we'll have some season preview content next week and maybe some predictions on that. We think the season unfolds, but we're going to catch you up to speed on sort of what's happened in camp and go over some of the major storylines that we have learned this August. How are you guys doing, Rob and Brianna?
Sporting my Cotton Bowl hat, which is, sad, factory of sadness for Buckeye fans. I think it says Canes on one side and Buckeyes on the other. But it's sharp looking. I like the little cotton ball there. So that's how I'm doing.
You guys don't give me the hat memo. And I would have worn a hat if you guys told me that we were doing hats.
Well, your hair looks great. Mine is like what I have left is horrific. Camp. What did we learn? We learned that Julian Sands more vocal. He's going to be a better leader. We learned that Jeremiah Smith will talk about anything and everything and gives nicknames to guys and thinks everybody's going to win the Heisman in the future. We learned that the offensive line, that Serveld is probably going to play guard, right guard. Joe, you guys can fill that in terms of where's he going to land. That seemed like that was one of the big question marks. We learned that the whole Bo Jackson versus anyone else was just a smokescreen, that Bo Jackson, is going to probably start and be pretty good. Brock Boyd, do I have that right? Right. Who I thought in the spring game was meh. Did not have a great spring game, which it's a practice. So you can discount that. Is supposedly incredible. We already knew Chris Henry Jr. was going to be good, and he is. And still the question marks are defense. But although there's a freshman that may be starting for like the first time since whenever.
If Jay Timmons does win the nickel spot, he would be the first true freshman to start on defense since Denzel Burke in 2021. First one to start a season opener. Sort of is like permanent, like this guy is going to start and be our starter this year.
Yeah. And as I tell people who want, my expertise on this subject, are the Buckeyes going to be good? And my answer is yes. So that's my deep analysis till the season begins, because they're always good these days. How good? We'll get into that at some point. There's my take, my hot take on the Buckeyes will be good, and they're offensively they'll be really good, and defensively to be determined. You guys can get into the details.
I was going to say, do you feel as if, Rob, there is which of those have moved you the most this August, where this is really significant development for Ohio State?
I would say that if Chris Henry Jr. or Boyd or whoever can be 3/4 of what Carnell Tate was, then the offense will be legitimately really dangerous. I think they already are, of course, but when you've got one guy, Jeremiah Smith, and the other side is like, yeah, they're good, but we don't know how good. But if they are real threats, then it's going to be tough to stop this offense. That would be my thing. The saying is a leader I hear that kind of all the time, honestly, every year. Like, he's a better leader than he was a year ago. What are they going to say? He's worse? Oh, he hasn't. Oh no, he's no better than he was last year. I mean, come on. It's just it's legit, I'm sure, but in terms of just X's and O's and just talent, I would say the other side where Jeremiah Smith is offensively. Defensively, I still don't know what to think. I stand by they lost three defensive players in the top 12 to the draft. You don't replace that. So I don't see how statistically they can be better than allowing 9 points a game. We shall see. And I even talked about Arthur Smith. I'll let you guys handle that, but Artie Smith, offensive coordinator, seems like they're high on him. Again, is Ryan Day going to say we made a mistake? This guy's a dope? No.
Brian, which of these storylines have grabbed your attention the most in August?
I think the Bo Jackson, we discussed it a lot. If he was it looks like for a hot minute, maybe he wouldn't be the starter, but everyone sounds really high on him. I thought that was an important development to know that he's improved. They feel like he's improved. You got to see it in the game, but they sounded really high on Bo and that he's their guy. He's their running back. He's who they're putting their faith into, especially after seeing him take some second team snaps. It was interesting to see if that was going to hold true. It seems like it is going into the season.
Yeah, it felt like they almost challenged to Bo Jackson, where you're just not going to be slotted into the running back one spot. You got to earn your spot. And well, he reclaimed that in camp, and they pushed him, and it seemed like he kind of answered the bell to that. I think for me, it still felt like maybe the biggest development on offense certainly was getting the offensive line figured out, and maybe a situation where they're going to be better off at tackle potentially this year. And I know it says a lot because you're moving Austin Sarabelt, who was a pretty productive tackle last year, to right guard from left tackle. But I think Ian Moore's emergence gives them somebody who's a more prototypical tackle size. And as Ryan Day said Monday, with Sarabelt, with Luke Montgomery on the opposite side of left guard, and then Carson Hinsman at center, that's a lot of beef in there. So they are a bigger offensive line rather than last year. I mean, really last year they were rolling out 4 guards and 1 tackle. Now this year you have 2 tackles and more, and Philip Daniels, who are sort of your prototypical tackle size. So I think that's a good development for the offense, where Moore was good enough where you felt like you could move Saraville back inside to his natural guard spot, and maybe you can protect Sayan better in some of those bigger games. So I think that was important for them figuring out. And it sounds like they mostly figured that out early on in camp. They haven't officially made that their starting unit. Ryan Day on Monday said this is the direction they're moving into, but this is how they've practiced for most of August. This is how they're going to likely line up against Ball State, and it should continue into the season. I think it gives them the best chance to have a better offensive line, and have it be the offensive line with some continuity throughout the season, because you kind of wondered where if maybe they didn't start off that way, if it would end up that way where they have to tinker with the line later in the year. So this, I think, answers that question, which was probably the biggest camp question for them to sort out. As Rob says, they have a lot of spots on defense where you don't know how it's going to appear in games, but in terms of solving pieces at this point in the calendar, to me, that was, I think, significant.
Do you think the changes, offensive line, moving Sarabelt, do you think it's to pass protect? Do you think the emphasis, I don't want to say de-emphasizing, but maybe emphasizing run blocking? I'm just curious because of Arthur Smith coming in, his reputation being this run guy. Do they maybe want to set it up so that they get the best run blocking they can? I'm just curious what your thoughts on that.
I think they probably just came down to who's the best 5 offensive linemen, and Ian Moore probably outweighed Josh Padilla, who was the other person in contention, who's, I think, a pretty good 6-man to have on your offensive line. But I think Moore seemed to have an edge over him. It does help the run blocking inside. But I think it gives you two tackles in the perimeter, which is really what you want, I think. So to me, I tend to think it's a question of Moore versus Padilla, and also can you get better pass protection on the perimeter, and having somebody who's sort of a prototypical tackle size is important for that.
Yeah, although they got to have quick feet too.
Right.
And I didn't know of Moore. I didn't see Moore a lot, so you guys can comment on whether if he's really picked it up.
Well, he played the second half of the quarterfinal loss to Miami, and I think held up pretty well. So even though a lot of the pass protection issues they had were in the first half of that game, so I think that's he's shown it a little bit. We don't see as much practice this time of year, but you've seen a little bit in games, and you just see his size. I think that it speaks maybe to the ceiling that this group could have if you're trying to project them sort of down the line into December. I think it puts them on a good track. I think for defense, a lot of it remains to be seen, but probably one of the bigger developments I thought was Jay Timmons, who we saw in the first week of camp playing a lot of nickel reps and could be in contention to start there. Dominic Kelly's played well. I mean, that's a freshman and a sophomore. There was a lot of discussion over the offseason about Ohio State getting an older roster and bringing in transfer pieces like Earl Little Jr., who very likely could start, but you have Leroy Roker who returns, and Terry Moore, a safety from Duke. And you've heard less about the latter two, Roker and Moore, in camp, and heard more about Kelly and Timmons, who are two of the younger guys. So that kind of makes you think differently about the secondary. Maybe some of the upside that they have of those two guys are pushing for time.
What about linebackers? Is Peyton Pierce all that? He's getting a lot of love. I know he's good. Is he? Where do you put him? 1 to 10, 10 being Chris Spielman, 1 being I won't even name it. But where do you think he lands? Who does he remind you of? Maybe that somebody else you've covered. Anybody?
He's like not. I mean, he does not look. I mean, Sonny and Arvell are two guys who they were so long, and he doesn't quite have that length. But Laurinaitis has been high on him for a long time, and they really like him. He's going to wear the green dot. In one of the videos that Ohio State released of the captains calling their parents, or the position coaches calling their parents, James Laurinaitis is talking to Peyton Pierce's parents and says that he had the highest voting total among the captains. So it speaks a lot to his leadership ability. So he just feels like somebody who has some presence there in the middle of the defense.
I think it's kind of hard to tell where he stands right now, because just with such a changing defense, you don't know how he is without those other guys. Like you just don't. I think you probably start him at maybe 7's too high, but like you give him going into a season of 7 and see kind of where he moves from there. But they trust him. They really trust him. It's from the coaches to the players. They seem really high on him. I do know that the linebackers were saying they didn't feel like they had a good first scrimmage. They said that they had a bad day, and Peyton Pierce really went in and got really emotional talking to them about how he felt it wasn't a good game. So I think there's a lot to be seen with the linebackers. There's a lot of change and kind of unknown, because I was kind of surprised to hear that it's like, yeah, we had a bad game.
Well, they don't have to worry about the first game. Texas will test them, but wearing your burnt orange there, Brianna.
It's actually not that orange. It's this camera.
Okay.
The camera makes it look more orange.
Good explanation there. Good out.
I think what remains to be seen for the linebackers too is how many they'll play. I mean, the base defense in recent years has pretty much been 4-2-5 pretty consistently, where you have 2 linebackers, and maybe when you play Iowa, you have 3 linebackers. But I wonder how different they'll look series to series this year because, as Rob said, they lose three really high-end players, and Arvell Reese and Sonny Styles and Caleb Downs, who were all in the top 11 of the draft last year. But their 1 through 16 on defense, I think, is arguably deeper than last year. And so maybe you don't have the high-end talent, but maybe your 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 guy on defense is better than a year ago. It gives you more options for how you want to deploy certain personnel packaging. And do they line up with some 3 linebackers where you have Christian Allegro and Peyton Pierce and maybe Riley Pettijohn together, or Quay Rusaw, who's a defensive end but has some linebacker pedigree to him. So I think there are options for what they want to do. Do you play 3 corners in the back end with Jermaine Matthews in the slot, or do you go with somebody like Jay Timmons at the nickel? I think there are just a lot of ways that we could potentially see Matt Patricia be creative this year, where he didn't have to be as much last year in terms of personnel. I mean, he was creative in terms of some of the window dressing they would do on their alignments and things like that. But it was largely the base personnel was sort of the same 11 down in and down out. I think this year the rotation could be different, and they could go deeper into it this year because they don't have as many guys where, oh man, you can't take him off the field. And you probably have more guys who are backups where I think should be worked in the rotation a bit more.
That's the $1 million question, right? Or the Julian saying $5 million question. Talent versus depth, like elite talent versus depth. I think that's what we're looking at on defense. You just laid it out really well. It's like, what would you rather have? They can be a little more creative, but maybe they just don't have that that top 10 NFL draft pick that can just win you the game or make the incredible play. I mean, they got enough talent that they can still make incredible plays. So that's what I'm curious about defensively. Is like, yeah, the depth's there. Is the elite talent there? And you guys usually step up. They usually improve. Like Bo Atkinson. Like, what's he gonna be? I'm curious about that guy because he was a little disappointing last year. Now, maybe he was just adjusting from North Carolina, transferring from North Carolina to Ohio State. Plus, he had Caden Curry. He wasn't going to beat him out. How good is he? Because they need those DEs to really be special. And Kenyatta Jackson, is he going to be? Where is he going to be? Is he going to be a Caden Curry? Is he going to be a JT, a Sawyer, or is he going to be a notch below that? Those are the things I'm kind of curious about.
Yeah, to me, defensive line is probably the biggest question mark on defense because they had a first round talent last year in Caden McDonald. I can't remember. I'm drawing a blank now if he went at the back end of the first round or early second. I think it was early second, maybe to the Texans.
Yeah, he was early second.
It was the Texans, but I can't remember now if it was in the 30 or early the second round. But nobody immediately on that defensive line grabs me right now. Is like, this guy's going to be in the first round of the draft or the second round of the draft. So it doesn't. Nobody screams that right now. And you know what Kenyatta Jackson is, but does he have a second gear? Then you have really unanswered questions on the other side with, is it Bo Atkinson? Is it Zion Grady? Is it Quay Rusaw? Some of the guys they have in the middle are nice. James Smith and John Walker. But even at this time last year, I think you kind of knew Caden Curry, high motor guy, and Caden McDonald had proven himself in sort of a supplementary backup role in 24, was involved in that goal line stand at Penn State. So there were guys that you felt like you could bank on. They don't quite have as many on the defensive line as they had last year. And I think specifically they don't have, this is a guy who's going to be day 1 or day 2 of the draft, where in the secondary it feels like there are just more options, which is interesting because they lose Caleb Downs, who's like their best player on defense last year. But I feel most confident in the secondary than any group on defense, just in terms of the number of options they have and the ceiling for some guys like Devin Sanchez. Like, it would be conceivable to me Devin Sanchez would just be the real deal, former 5-star, goes against Jeremiah Smith in practice every day, a ton of length. He wants to win the Thorpe Award and be an All-American. That's pretty ambitious for a sophomore, but I mean, certainly you could see him making a push for being one of the top corners in the country this year. He had some growing pains last year, but I mean, he's got the potential and the ceiling, and they've been high on him. So it feels like the secondary, you have a combination of depth options, you have a combination of high ceiling guys, which I think should leave you encouraged, but the front, the defensive line, there are probably fewer of those.
By the way, is there any truth to the rumor that Caleb Downs is coming back to play for LSU?
Only if Saban coaches them, that would tug at his heartstrings.
Oh yeah, the SEC voted that down, so you can't come back from the NFL. Yeah, sorry, Marvin Harrison Jr. You can't come back and be on the other side from Jeremiah.
Use his last year of eligibility.
Crazy stuff.
He's waiting till his brother gets here.
Oh yeah.
Good point.
What about that kicking game? I love those kickers. I love to talk about the kickers. Brianna, anything? What have you seen out of the kickers? They don't let us see much, but
I saw on day 3 he made a few from like 30 yards and maybe missed 1, 2, but that's all I've seen and or heard of the kickers. Besides, I think you got our little junior to say it's a tough position. Honestly, they haven't really talked at all about the kicking game,
which is kind of typical of this coaching staff. They will say that the special teams are important and vital, but I'm not saying they just give it lip service, but compared to, and we've talked about this, Urban Meyer and Jim Tressel, where, special teams were super emphasized. It doesn't feel like the Ryan Day era special teams are as talked about. Maybe they're just as important, but they're not emphasized, and it's bit them in the rear a little bit with the kicking game. So
Ryan Day will talk about it insofar as young players sort of being involved on special teams and a way to kind of incorporate them. When he was talking about the wide receiver rotation on Monday, he mentioned that one of the tiebreakers they would use for trying to determine reps among their receivers would be like who can make an impact on special teams. But you don't see him really going on and on about kicking field goals because that's not a fellow who likes to kick field goals. He likes to score touchdowns. So I think that sort of bleeds into maybe how much they talk about the kicker. Although Connor Hawkins, the Baylor transfer, did lose his black stripe this week, so he is I guess done enough to reach that milestone. But I mean, kicker is such a funny camp position because if you were to pull Ohio State fans and tell them, hey, how do you feel about the kicking game? Connor Hawkins has made every field goal in training camp. I don't know how much their PTSD from recent years would really be fixed after seeing the Jaden Fielding missed field goals of recent years. I don't think that would just automatically go away. I think it's kind of a case of they want to see somebody make a high leverage, high stakes kick in a real football game sometime in the fall.
Hey, real quick question. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, what do you have to do to lose your black stripe as a field goal kicker? Like, is there like a number you gotta hit field goals? Like, how long does it typically take to lose your black stripe?
It must be your make to doink ratio has to sort of be just right in that sweet spot.
Hey, real quick on this black stripe, it seems like it was always just a freshman. Like, when does the freshman lose their black stripe? Is this a new thing where transfers also have black? I mean, did Earl Little Jr. have a black stripe?
He lost his in spring. Yeah, they give it all the transfers too. Obviously, there are more transfers now, so it just tends to sort of generate more headlines and attention than it did 5-6 years ago, where you got a transfer class of 4 guys, so it didn't really make as much noise in that way.
Well, that's the new way, the brotherhood, which is like freshmen are embraced a lot of the times because they're incredibly good and they can start. But
Mhm.
back in the day, to date myself, if you were like a freshman or even sophomore, you were treated like dirt. Um, and now that's not the case. We're all kind of all for one for all. Yeah, you're a freshman in title, but you're not treated that way. At least that's what they say. Be interesting in practice if they're still carrying the shoulder pads into the locker room after practice. I don't know how that or the water, but they have so many it's assistants and managers and all that they take care of all that. Now there must be, it feels like there's 100 minions running around doing all that, whereas it used to be your freshman.
I mean, that's the case because you got the huge support staff arm now. Not only do you have assistant to assistant position coaches, but you have all the recruiting personnel and player personnel who'll be out at practice walking around with water bottles. Like Billy Homer, who's the guy who's in charge of keeping track of all the portal guys, like he'll walk around practice with a water bottle for somebody. So it's you have this giant staff. So yeah, more hands on deck a little bit.
They only do it on days media isn't there. So on like Monday practices or Thursdays, yeah, but Wednesdays they don't have to carry anything.
Mm.
There you go.
All right, what about a couple things? Go ahead, Joe. You got a point you need to make.
One point for development. I think this applies less maybe for 2026, but it has some 2027 implications. Ohio State's had a surprising backup quarterback competition, which you can read into it however you like. But I think the assumption coming into this year was Tavian St. Clair was just going to be put him in Penn as QB2. And Luke Fahey, a true freshman from Mission Viejo, California, has made a bit of a push for that backup quarterback spot. And Fahey was not somebody who came in with a ton of recruiting buzz. He was only a 3-star recruit, the top 500 overall prospect. Not somebody who you would on paper expect like, oh man, this is somebody who's going to challenge and push to be the backup behind Sayin. But as of this last week, Ryan Day was not willing to name a backup quarterback, and we'll see if he does it at any point. But I think that sort of raises some eyebrows of what this quarterback room looks like beyond this year, because Sayin's eligible to enter the NFL draft, and is St. Clair not somebody who's really sort of made his case well enough where if Sayin does go, this is your immediate obvious successor if he can't win the backup job this year, or there's no quarterback competition and Ryan Day maybe needs to light a fire and push him as well, or Luke Fahey's done a nice job of acclimating well to college football. I don't know. You can read into it however you like.
Yeah, I tend to think it's a little bit of the Bo Jackson, Isaiah West thing, which is, he's tough on quarterbacks, Ryan Day, and he kind of wants to light a fire under St. Clair and not let him coast. Is, oh, I'm the backup. Of course, I'm the number two guy. But it'll be. I am curious about it. That might have been the shocker of fall camp, honestly, for me, is when I heard that St. Clair wasn't just an automatic number two. I read it and it's like did a double take.
Right.
Like what's going on here? Because the California kid, he looks very small,
Correct.
height wise. I mean, he's kind of, he's stocky, but like, I don't know, Tate Martellish.
Yeah, he is not like a tall quarterback by any means. He's listed at 5'11", 206, Luke Fahey. So he is short.
I
That
think
that did raise eyebrows, I think.
I think we'll still see St. Clair like when Ball State or Kent State gets out of hand. I think he's still going to be the one coming off the bench this year, but I do think there is implication for next year. And I still think that's something they might be watching for next year, but I don't think week 3 we'll be seeing Luke Fahey come off the bench to give Julian Sayin the rest of the day off.
Here's what I'd say. I would say this, that Luke Fahey is not going to be the starter in 2027. So I don't think this is so much even when you say looking ahead, if if St. Clair isn't the guy and they determine he's just not up for it, they will go portal for their starter. They're not putting a 5'11" guy out there who's, uh, I just don't see that. I could be wrong, but I don't see that. I think this is light a fire, and if St. Clair like isn't the guy next year, the guy isn't going to be Fahey.
Yeah, I mean, when Dave first mentioned that Fahey was pushing St. Clair for the job, my my instinct, my initial reaction was, oh, he's trying to create some competition here where he doesn't want to slot somebody into the backup quarterback job just willy-nilly. I think it's a case where you want to get your young player in a situation where they get pushed, and that type of competition is going to be good for him. So that would still be the way I would view it. But if it's a situation where maybe St. Clair is a little behind in his development and they are not certain if is their best, most capable backup this year, I think to Rob's point that it does lead them with the possibility of going into the portal to bring in somebody they feel more confident that could start next year, or really start passing around the collection plate to see if there might be enough to keep number 10 to stick around for another year. So I think those would be the situations to sort of keep your eyes peeled on if somehow Fahey does beat out St. Clair for the backup job, or they could still bring in a guy in the portal, and maybe St. Clair is able to win that job. His profile, the more you sort of think about Tavian St. Clair, is interesting because he was a 5-star, but he was playing in Bell Fountain in small town Ohio football, and you wondered, did he get the game experience that you would want from an Ohio State level quarterback? Because he was the first Ohio high school quarterback they had signed since Joe Burrow. And they've gotten players who've come from a lot of California quarterbacks. Justin Fields was from Georgia. Will Howard obviously is a little bit different because he was a sort of a veteran college quarterback. Pat McCourt's from Philadelphia. They've recruited guys from big metro areas: Atlanta, LA, Philadelphia, and Haskins was from DC. So the rural small town quarterback has not been a sort of a profile that they've worked with in recent years, and so maybe the learning curve is a little bit heavier for St. Clair than what maybe should have been anticipated.
That's a great point. That's a great point. I actually covered Bell Fountain and the league they're in back in the day, and it's not the strongest league. So now maybe it is now, or maybe it's improved, and it wasn't terrible, but it was not like, Cincinnati Catholic League or anything like that. It was small, relatively rural, and that doesn't mean he could be phenomenal. I don't know.
Right. I mean, like Joe
But
Burrow.
competition wise, it's not to the level of as you spoke about.
And like it didn't ultimately impact Joe Burrow. I mean, he's from Athens, Ohio, which is not a huge metro area, but ultimately did well for himself in
Not bad.
quarterbacking. So it's not the end all be all, but it could explain why the development courses are different when they're first, second year in college versus where they are in year 4 or 5 or further down the line in the NFL if they get there.
I think it's not an off season if there's no quarterback conversation too in this one. Like, I think it's like impossible. Like, I'm not even joking. Like, it's impossible not to look at the quarterbacks. And it's like you have such a strong, like, obvious answer and saying to be the starters, but you're always still thinking about the quarterbacks even for like the future. So it's like that backup position is important, even if it ends up going to a transfer next season. It's still like such an important position. You're always going to think about it in some sense. If it's not about the starter, it's going to be about the backups.
And like the thing is, the way college football works now, the portal is going to be open in January. I mean, like they sort of have to be thinking about it and planning for it this fall. So It will make it will make the second half of the Ball State Kent State games kind of interesting if we get to see these two quarterbacks out there. Rob Oller is known to sort of bemoan Day's willingness to put the backups in the third, fourth quarter. So I can already see the frustration among Rob building in the third quarter. And why isn't Sane out there? Why isn't he on the sideline? So it'll be even more to a greater degree this year.
When Sam plays all full four quarters, both those games, and we still just know nothing.
My head will explode
We
if
know
that
what Rob
happens.
would be
And it
like.
has, to be fair, it hasn't burned them too much doing that. They've been pretty good under Day, but as we always mention, Justin Fields did get injured. I believe Justin Fields got injured in either late third quarter or something early fourth. Joey probably remembers the details of that when he really didn't need to be in there.
Yeah. Well, it always depends on your definition of
Yeah.
how close a game is. I think you could be charitable and say that was still fairly close.
Yeah. Well, and broken record here, but I've always said that Ryan Day, has that NFL background, and in the NFL, the quarterback plays everything except like the last snap kneel down. You pay the guy, and now you are paying the guy. You're paying Julian saying big money to be your quarterback, and I think there's going to be more and more. The thought process will be, we've got a lot invested in this guy. Let's play him.
Well, I've always viewed his willingness or just insistence or eagerness or however you want to put it. But the fact that he plays the quarterback so late in the games is often a case of most of the time most of the time he is at a first year starting quarterback. And he is a quarterback coach at heart, and he wants those guys to get game reps. So even if Ohio State's ahead by 3 touchdowns, the way he is processing things is Julian Sain has only 4 career starts on his belt, under his belt, and he wants him to get more reps and experience. And this year's a little different because Sain's the first quarterback since Stroud in 22, who's been a second-year guy, and only Day's second, or only a second since Fields in 20. So he's been in this situation very infrequently. So we'll see.
Yeah. Yes, and the Sain's probably gone.
Right.
So there is an emphasis to see who your next guy up is going to be. So we'll see. What about changing gears here just a little bit? What about these end zone suites? I took the tour of the stadium earlier this week. Today is August 28th, so a couple days ago, and I think $144,000 per suite. But that is secondary, at least on the comments, social media comments, and message boards, to how, quote, ugly they are. On one hand, that they're just these boxy boxes at the end of the end zone. My knee-jerk reaction to them wasn't so much that they're ugly or whatever. It was that I thought they were a little close to the end of the end zone in terms of a safety thing. I was not like jarringly close, like 3 yards, but it felt like they were like maybe 5 yards. I'm not 5 to 7 yards from the end of the end zone, which to me does not seem like a lot when you consider guys are, going full sprint to try to haul in a pass at the back of the end zone if that ball gets tipped or whatever. And one of these wealthy donors might have Jeremiah Smith in their lap if the pass goes a little deep, or they better have good hands. And Joey says they're open air. I can't remember. I thought they were also glass enclosed.
I think there are 2 parts to the suites.
I think you can maybe close them. I don't know. I didn't give it that close a look, but that seems to be all the rage, emphasis on rage out there of like, why do they need this? This is dangerous, or these are ugly. We should do better. You guys didn't see them. Do you have an overall thought on the end zone sort of going corporate.
It just feels like football's a response to like sideline seats in basketball, or I guess even like soccer. Like it feels like, oh, we can't really do this, so let's make these suites and have people sitting there, but it's never going to be like celebrity. Yeah, and let's make more money. Like how much can you sell those sideline seats for if it's a good game? And Ohio State, I will say, is like up there with an NBA game when in terms of like stature of people attending. So they want to make that money. See who's gonna sit there. They're gonna be filled. I think it's gonna be a lot of companies, probably corporate sponsors, who are gonna be sitting there. But yeah, Joey said they may have to pass around a collection plate for maybe get staying to stay. Maybe that's how you raise that money, is those suites.
The LeBron James suite.
Well, no, he's in Philly now, so he will be going to Temple football.
Oh, no, yeah, forgive me. Yes.
I mean, like,
Anyhow, I just, it's just the further corporatization of college football. And
it's the cost of doing business. You want to have a big national championship contending roster. You got to raise money to acquire talent, especially on the field and in the booth for the guys calling plays, or the sidelines for the whole staff. I mean, it just costs a lot of money to do those things, and to me, they don't look all that aesthetically nice. But in terms of the real estate that they take up in the stadium, in terms of who you're competing with, I don't think it's all that bad of a spot. Sure, it's a bad view of the game, but it doesn't really restrict the views of other people in the seats. I mean, we've seen this with some schools. USC had a big renovation about a decade ago where they cleared out a huge chunk of seats at midfield at the 50-yard line, and they probably eliminated like 15,000 seats. So to me, you're not removing any seats from the capacity is not changing with these. You're not blocking views of people who have seats at midfield. So it's, I think, good in that way, where if you're used to being in C deck, or if you have good seats at an A deck at midfield or somewhere else in the stadium, they're not going to bother your view. Really, they just sort of make the south stands. The south stands don't extend as far to the field as they used to. So sure, they're corporate, but they're not building more luxury suites in a place that you might want to sit as generally a fan.
I would agree with that. They didn't just slap them in. There was some thought given to it. Aesthetically, they're not what we've seen at Jerry World, which is, as Brianna was talking before we came on, it's like the Jerry World sidelines down AT&T Stadium in Dallas, and actually they go down kind of into the ground. You step down into, and these are just field level from what I could see.
Right.
They can't be the first college team to bring these on, are they? Are they the first college team, or like there has to be other teams that are doing this in some capacity? I don't know if it's on the sideline instead of in the end zone, but like not like Ohio State is like inventing a new type of seat.
USC.
No, they're not. I think to me, the thing that struck me was how close they were to the end of the end zone. It seems like I've seen them. I'm trying to remember if Iowa or other places have like weight rooms and stuff behind the goalpost, but pretty far behind. That's just what jumped out at me, and I'm sure that they have given it some thought. I mean, they don't want a player crashing into that or breaking through glass if there is glass. Better make those things plexiglass.
Yeah, I definitely think there's going to be a moment in a game at some point this year where somebody scores a touchdown in that end zone, and I don't think they're going to collide with anybody, but there'll be enough momentum where they feel close enough to some booster in the end zone, and they will give them a high five or a little like fist bump or do some sort of celebration or grab some pop. It will be some sort of meme GIF at some point this year of some Ohio State player doing that.
How about a show me the money? I can see him scoring and running up to that booth and like, okay, I need a couple more mil here.
I would respect it. I would respect that type of celebration.
I would expect that to happen. And you know what? It's not a bad play. I mean, 144, and people in those suites are going to have the dough. Mm-hmm. Come on.
unless their corporation paid for it, and they're like one of the low level people. Like, I really don't have the money.
Yeah,
I wonder
not fair.
I wonder if Chase Bank gets a suite as sort of a pro bono for the deal.
Yeah.
They might there might be a
They
Chase suite.
might, they
Like,
might, they
it
might.
feels like they would.
Oh, they also have new turf, which I'm not an expert on artificial turf. It felt like the same, maybe a little more cushiony than what they've had, but they're not going back to grass. It sounds like talking to the people there, just too much going on with maintenance, and so I think artificial turf is the way it's going to be for the foreseeable future.
Well, they have
And
21 pilots are gonna be there at one point
yeah, that's
during
part
the
of the
season, and so it's like you're going from like a game to a concert to a game. It's probably not easy to do on grass.
Yeah, that's what they were saying. The field can get beat up, and they claim that grass doesn't grow real great there because they've lowered the field when they did the renovations and it doesn't get enough light. Blah blah blah.
Some ag school if you can't grow grass.
Right.
Penn State,
You
Michigan
can
State,
smoke it in Ohio, but you can't grow it. Come on now.
Penn State, Michigan State, Purdue. Those are all ag schools that can grow grass.
Yeah.
So
Anyhow, we will get next week, right, Joey, into our predictions on where we think Ohio State will end up,
yeah,
regular season, playoff, who's going to be who are the Heisman? Is it going to be a Julian Sand, Jeremiah Smith? Are they going to cancel each other out? We don't, we don't even know how the season will go. But
right. We'll have some bold predictions next week, some boldish predictions, some lukewarm predictions.
some
Then you can
cold predictions
Luke
where I was
Fahey
right.
predictions.
The what?
The Luke Fahey predictions.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've already predicted that. So
I think my prediction of Legend Bay being a future Heisman winner, was taken this week by Jeremiah Smith.
you could double down. You could say he'll win.
I could just double down.
win
This
two on
season,
Archie. He's the next Archie. He's going to win 3. Why not?
Just lean even harder into it. We'll be back next week. We are inching closer to college football. Thanks for joining us.